Welcome to Ind AS 37, Provisions, Contingent Liabilities and Contingent Assets. Next. A provision is a liability of uncertain timing and amount. That means a liability of uncertain timing and amount. A liability which may or may not arise in the future, and if it arises, the amount of the liability is not known today with certainty. What is a liability? A liability is a present obligation of the entity arising from past events, settlement of which is expected to result in an outflow from the entity of resources embodying economic benefits. That means one liability is a present obligation which arises from something happened in the past, one past event, and that obligation can be settled by outflow of economic resources from the entity. That means there will be maybe outflow of money to settle that obligation. So first thing is, a provision is a liability which may or may not arise in the future, and even if it arises, the amount is not known today with certainty. It has to be estimated. And it is a present obligation, this liability arising from a past event and settlement of which expected result outflow from the entity resources embodying economic benefit. For example, there will be some cash outflow to settle that obligation. Next. A provision can be recognized only when all the following conditions are met. There are three conditions. What is the first condition? An entity has a present obligation as a result of a past event. Obligation can be legal or constructive. We are discussing it later. So first thing, one present obligation, it arises from a past event. Second thing, it is probable that an outflow of resources embodying benefits will be required to settlement that obligation. That obligation has to be settled. Something will go out of the entity, outflow of resources embodying economic benefits. For example, some cash flow will go out of the business to settle that obligation. Third thing is what? A reliable estimate can be made of the amount of the obligation. We do not know what will be the exact obligation in the future, but we need to make one reliable estimate of the obligation that has to be settled. What is the estimated amount, for example, that has to be paid to settle the obligation? So these 3 points. Next. I told you there can be legal obligation, there can be constructive obligation. First we see what is legal obligation. Legal obligation derives from a contract. There may be contract between two parties. So when there is a contract between two parties, each party has one right or obligation. So non-performance of an obligation by either party may warrant penalty. So that entity has to compensate the other. So a provision has to be made for that contract. This is legal obligation. It is between two parties. For non-performance obligation, one has to pay compensation to the other, for which it has to create a provision. Then it is legislation. Law of the land says this. For non-performance obligation, this is the penalty. Law of the land will decide. Third thing is what? Other operations of law. For a particular trade, there is an obligation that they return goods within a fortnight. So there is an obligation that goods can be returned within a fortnight. So one example we take for this, other operations of law. Next, when we buy a watch, we are given a warranty card which says in case of any defect, the working of the watch within 6 months, the watch would be repaired free of cost. That piece of paper is like a contract written by the watch manufacturer and given to us as a result of past event, sale of the watch. This sale of the watch leads to a legal obligation on part of the manufacturer to repair the watch if there is a manufacturing defect. So it's a legal obligation. They say that any defect, we will repair it. So it's legal obligation. Next, what is constructive obligation? Constructive obligation derives from an entity's action where, by an established pattern of past practice, published policies, or a sufficiently specific current statement, the entity has indicated to other parties that it will accept certain responsibilities. As a result, the entity has created a valid expectation on the part of those other parties that it will discharge those responsibilities. One example, that is, say, for a business, for an entity, bonus is given to the people, those who are covered by the payments of Bonus Act. This is legal obligation. Company has to pay, irrespective of the profit earned, bonus for those who are covered by the payments of Bonus Act. But those who work above, those who are not covered by the payment of Bonus Act, what is given to them? That is called ex gratia. The entity gives ex gratia. Fine, 2 months salary, 1.5 months salary. So bonus amount covered by the payments, it is decided by the employee and the employer. They decide what will be the amount of bonus. But ex gratia is voluntary. Company himself indicates, gives a declaration that everybody will be given gratuity. This is the basis for those employees who are not covered by payment of bonus. This is constructive obligation. Take few more examples. ABC Limited advertises policy of giving refunds for defective shoes. By publishing its policy, ABC Limited has created a valid expectation on part of the customer that it refunds money. Thus, ABC Limited has a constructive obligation as a result of a past event. Past event is sale. Company takes the obligation on its own. That is the present obligation. You may have seen one company taking back 10,000 cars. Some defect is found which is beyond rectification. It's a very important thing from accounting perspective. How do you show prior period adjustment? Constructive obligation. Company makes an announcement that we will take the car back.